What's up? Welcome to the Godspeed podcast. I'm Ryan.
This is Jameson.
What's up, dude? All right, let's do it. We got Cody Carson from Set It Off.
Here we go.
Oh,
that was great. Just because you go, we got Cody.
all right. All right, we're back with this new adventure. So we decided to try recording live. Why not, huh?
I was inspired by Bill O'Reilly, mainly.
Bill O'Reilly. Why?
Because everything he does it live.
Dude, you're awesome. So, live, what we wanted to do is we have so many of these remote interviews that we thought it'd be really cool for the people that tune in eventually, where if they want to talk or ask questions, we can do it live. Why not? I mean, that'd be pretty sweet. I mean, it's mostly you doing a lot of these by yourself, but maybe that would help it so we can both be on a little bit more often.
It's a rough 2019 for Ryan's schedule as far as interviews go. Actually, the very first one we had was all you, so.
Was
it's
it?
just all. Yeah, it was Wilson.
Oh,
it was Will
man,
Smith.
I forgot. You're right.
It was Will Smith 3, so that was all you.
That's
yeah,
right.
I'm excited for this for many reasons, but I always enjoy the more interactive part of podcasts, like sending in questions and waiting for your question to be read and all that. But why not just do it like all at once and do it live? So we're going to end up saying do it live so many times, and I hear Bill O'Reilly's voice every time. My other favorite thing is how I look like a ghost on this new webcam I got. So you look like you just got back from Hawaii.
Dude, I do. I think I just got back from soccer, actually. You know.
Oh, cool. You guys win?
Wesley scored 2 goals, though.
Whoa!
I know.
2 more than I ever scored.
But that's it, man. So Cody, how do you know Cody? I want to hear more.
I know Cody Carson from, well, of course, from his band, Set It Off. I interviewed him maybe 5 or 6 years ago now for the first time. It was on Warped Tour. I actually have a picture of it. You can't see it. It's right over here on my wall. But his father had just passed from cancer, and I interviewed him just about like the idea of grieving and kind of getting over a really hard loss and stuff. And in fact, when I was doing the research for this updated interview, I came across my original interview with him, and so I watched it, and thank God I'm not on it or anything. Like, you can't see me and you can't hear me. But I went to read the comments, and as you know, YouTube is like never friendly ever. And there was like people saying the nicest stuff about him and about how sweet he was and about all the nice stuff he said about his dad. And so it was really cool. And so that gave me like a lot more excitement to talk to him again. And I don't know if I think I told you this, but did I tell you where this interview took place?
You did not, but I did see a few pictures.
So you usually interview bands. It's always different. But the hope that you have usually is like a green room. Like you want some sort of controlled, somewhat environment, and to keep it quiet and stuff. The bus is the second best place to do it. So they had a bandwagon, which is kind of a smaller version of a bus. Long story short, he was like, I got on the bus and he's like, hey, is it cool if we record this in the bathroom? And I was like, the bus was kind of packed and stuff, and so I was like, no, that's fine. Like, we're not going to kick everyone out in the rain, so we can do this. So I'd say the bathroom was about the size of 2 people, 3 if you stand in the shower, which I was half in the shower for the whole interview. So he's sitting on the sink, as you see in the pictures, and I'm leaning against dirty wet towels, trying to not slip back into the shower every time the bandwagon moved.
Well, you guys had the most fun of any 2 in the bathroom for an interview. It was a pretty good interview.
I hope so. I mean, I hope we had the most fun. I hope there wasn't any other shenanigans going on. But
yeah,
he's as you can tell, also as soon as the interview starts and you hear Cody laugh, like he's such an infectious dude. He's super positive, super smiley. The whole first few minutes were just about how he can't shut up and how he just loves to talk. So. Perfect podcast guest.
Yeah, dude, I enjoyed listening to it when I put the video together. I mean, yeah, his laugh is infectious.
I will say too, but depending on how long this interview runs, the last couple minutes or so is all about video games, and I thought, man, Ryan would be way more suited to have this conversation.
Ah, dude, I know. See, I keep missing all these awesome moments. It's really frustrating.
He's talking about, like I can't even like jokingly reference what he was talking about because I don't know these games, but let's say he was even just talking about like just Xbox stuff, Call of Duty, Red Dead Redemption, all these like current things, and I'm like, yeah, like Pac-Man's still pretty sweet, right?
Hey, retro. Retro's where it's at.
Oh, that's true. It's coming back, I guess.
It
but
is.
Yeah, super fun interview. I would have Cody on like once every couple months or so, because you feel like you don't have to prepare anything either. You can just sit down like it's like an old friend. So let's get into his interview actually.
Yeah.
So okay. So midnight, of course,
Yes.
is a big thing to talk about. The cliche thing or the joke is always that when a musician gets happy, falls in love, that's when the songs start to suck. You touched on this
I did.
in the videos, and
Yeah.
so the album's a lot about happiness. So that's something we
Yeah.
talk about a ton, like how your happiness relates to your art,
Yeah,
vice
yeah, it
versa.
does.
So if you could expand on why is it about
You know,
happiness?
it's weird, man. It's like totally a catch-22 in a way that like I want to I want to have really great material to write about at all times, and I always take notes of things that I want to write about. But on the last record, on Upside Down, I was personally intentionally challenging myself to write more happy songs because I never do, because we don't bottle it up, like I was saying before, and people relate to me a lot more when I'm really pissed off. So it was like more of a conscious effort this time to be like, all right, I'll just experience my happiness in my own privacy. But I guess like there's this part of me that's like, well, screw you guys, man. Like be happy for me and enjoy that. But I get it. It's like someone rubbing happiness in your face.
Right.
So I can see that too. So like, people appreciate it more when they get to see the real dark side of everyone and get to know that they're not the only ones that go through that.
Right.
So I get that.
What's funny is I wrote this question just earlier today, and then just saying it out loud, I was like, that makes it sound like what I'm leading up to is like, so the album's terrible.
So it's awful.
So let's talk
Sorry,
about
don't
that.
Go listen.
Yeah. How can you expand on how bad it is? But no, I mean that's totally true, and I've had that, especially when I was younger, before I understood like, oh, these people deserve to be happy too.
Yeah.
I remember Say Anything being a big example of like people making, I know, and people making jokes like, well, she was on drugs again. It's like,
that's
what's
so
terrible?
Dude, but like people said that about him and many other artists that started angsty and then kind of chilled out.
Yeah.
But like for me, it's like I've always been angsty, and it was kind of like I was saying, more of a conscious decision to be less that way because I'm I don't know, just a different vibe in general.
Yeah.
And then this was like, all right, you want angry me? I'll give you angry me. And it wasn't that hard to do. We were going through a lot, so I had like a lot off my to get off my chest. So it was quite easy to do that.
Is that something? Because in the stuff I've seen lately, you haven't gotten too into detail about that stuff. But what were some of the things that were
the
happening?
most in detail I can really get is like that. So with Upside Down, again, still very extremely proud of that record, and there's a lot of people that love those happier songs. But I get why our core fan base wanted more of that angst and that aggression back. But it wasn't our most successful record. We've never had a moment like that. Like, and then not to sound like, oh, we're awesome, we're not. But like, it was more like our first time really feeling the step back. Yeah. And right after that huge leap forward with Duality, and that hurt at first, and then also, like our team, who we just got a new manager, was like really gunning for us, and then once he saw that it didn't go exactly how he planned, it really felt like it was like, oh, okay, well, here's a random excuse I made up. We don't want to work with you anymore. Right. And it felt like we felt abandoned, and it was really hard to digest because it felt like a breakup, like someone that you were in love with because you felt like everything was supposed to happen and this and that, and it all just crumbled right beneath our feet. And I was in a dark space because I was like, well, is this a sign? Like, is this my first sign to be like, dude, reconsider things? Like, maybe you should quit. It entered my brain. It genuinely did. There's a lyric in Dancing with the Devil. It's I wonder if our resigning is becoming the silver lining. And it's basically like it's kind of like all those thoughts went through my head, and I was always afraid to talk about ever having doubt. Because a lot of times you feel in a band like you have to come off invincible because otherwise you look weak. But I don't care if I look weak because we're all weak. Like in a way, it's just a matter of how we express it differently. Some people are act extremely confident and act like nothing phases them ever, and like kudos to them. But that's got to eat you up a little bit. Right. So I've never felt better than to be able to express it very freely. Anyways, I was it took a toll on me. I was I've told this story before, but I was like in a grocery store. I'll never forget. I was just shopping for the week, and I was with my girlfriend, and I just started thinking about it a lot, and I started crying, and I had to like go look closely at groceries to block my face from everybody, and I was just like, I need to write and get this all out, and that was kind of the starting point of where this all came from, and it was just once you start to really hold that in, you realize it's almost like just like this tank of gas that just needs to be used. Yeah. That you need to get it out and just express everything, and I think that is why it has the vibe that it does this time around.
Well, I think your fans are always going to be able to see through if you're not being honest. Like,
oh, of course, and that's always been huge to us, honestly. Like, and that's why I never like thought too much in like the happier sound in the last record, because I was like, well, this is how I feel, so I'm going to write how I feel. Yeah. And I never want to be disingenuous ever. I never ever want to release a song. I'm like, oh, we're going to write about this thing that I've never been through, but we think people will like it. It's marketable. No, like screw that. Like, so. Yeah, we know that they'll be able to tell the moment we're not being ourselves, and that's always been really prevalent in our minds.
Yeah, and I think it's always that cliche thing of like you have to be happy with what you made at the end of the day. Like
exactly.
I had an interview earlier today with Switchfoot, and they've been around forever.
Oh,
very upbeat, very positive, great songs. But with a band like that, you feel like saying like, don't you ever get pissed off? Like, don't you want to put out a record where you're just I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm angry at God, I'm angry at everything.
Yeah.
So I think people can tell real quick, like, oh, they knew what was trendy, or they knew what would sell. And a lot of bands get stuck in that rut though too, and can't get out. So.
And then that's the thing too, is like one thing I am happy about this record is there are a ton of like more aggressive sounding songs, but there's still the happy songs too. Like, so I think it was more about understand. I feel like every record in every era of every band, the main focal point is just the word balance. Like, how do we balance it in the right way? It doesn't mean it has to be 50-50 balance. I mean, like, what is our ratio to where we feel happy and they feel happy? Like, where can we live in a comfortable space and they live in a comfortable space, and it just comes together naturally. And then now that we've figured that out with this, it just seems natural.
Yeah. Well, and then stylistically too. I mean, do you start out with, because you guys have dove headfirst into different genres so far. So stylistically, do you say, well, these are how the songs are coming out, so let's go this direction, or do you say, no, let's write this kind of record and hope the song and like mold from there?
We knew at first like the bullet points of what we wanted to bring back. That was the biggest thing. It's not so much like what we wanted to do new, but what do we want to bring back, as well as the knowledge that we've gained through being able to write these like poppier styles, like, because that's what it's always been. Like, when we first started, it's like a pop rock band, but like just total major key. Like, all it was like major key stuff, and then we went extremely on the opposite side, like bipolar, straight up dark, gothic almost, like cinematic stuff. Like that was really like that, as well as Horrible Kids. And then with the next record, we first aligned ourselves with a producer that knew how to take stuff that I listened to growing up and always loved, and found out how to merge it into what we were doing, which is what I've always wanted to do. I just didn't know how to write or produce like stuff. Like, for instance, the influences I'm referring to are like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Destiny's Child, TLC, Justin Timberlake, but that merged with like the other stuff, like the nu metal side of me, the pop punk side of me, and the funk side of me. Like how do we do all that? And I didn't know. And once we learned how to do that, it became second nature. Yeah. And now we were just, I guess, always trying to figure out, all right, now that we have this knowledge, how do we make it into set it off fully? And Midnight is that. Yeah. And that's what makes me so pumped about it. It's like, this is what we've been trying to do. Yeah. Like, Duality was like the discovery of it, and then this was almost feels like the logical next step after Duality. Huh. Yeah, it almost feels that way.
And then how much did Skylar have to do with it?
Happy All the Time?
Well, so did he only work on that song?
Only that song.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, but that song, he was heavily involved. It was like when we bring someone in to write with us, we count them as another member of our band. Like, we're not going to be like, oh, you can only do this, because it has to be us. And no, we're like, that's one thing, is like you were saying, like, how do we kind of figure it out? Where's it going to go? It's, so Dan and I will go and write a song, and we don't go in with a box anymore. We're just like, we're going to write whatever riff starts it, that's the direction it's going. Whatever melody comes out, that's where we're going with it. And because that's just what we're genuinely feeling at the moment. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we either write a song that we love and it makes sense for our band, or it's just a song we wrote and we love and it's just not for Set It Off. And so, and we'll have discussions about that. And we and Max and Zach were very prevalent in those discussions, being like, yo, this might be too happy. There's even an episode of our Midnight Thoughts documentary series coming out where you get to first really see us like butt heads about it.
Oh, really?
I'm really excited for people to see that, because it's just real. Like, it's raw. It's what bands go through. But it was a really collaborative process through and through. But Skylar was very hands-on with Happy All the Time with his chord progressions and his bass playing, and we had to give him a shout on that, man. He's a monster.
He's an awesome dude.
Love him.
When Issues would come here and record all the time, Interlace, and
awesome.
Yeah, just the nicest dudes. I mean, this was 4 or 5 years ago, but nicest dudes.
Absolutely.
What do you think, so whether it's personally, get into the lyrics a little bit if you want, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from making this album, and now that you've been playing it for people and seeing kind of responses and reactions?
I think the biggest lesson, that's a hard one to answer, because my brain's always moving as far as like, I'm over analytical, and
Really?
I like to work. Yeah, right. Who knew? No, I also like to work caffeinated, so my brain's even moving. Like, I think of ADHD as kind of an advantage in writing, because your brain's going so many different places at once. But there's usually something capturing them, like a voice memo running, something recording it.
Yeah.
But so I can sometimes let things fly by me. But I think for me, the biggest lesson on this record was going into the ideal of overanalyzation and a tons of ideas and wanting to add all the time. Mike Green was really great at helping me delete. He was really great at helping me go back and being like, all right, do we need to add that? Does it need this? And I was like, okay, well, that's good. And just understanding the gross word for it, but the guts of a song, like what makes it need to function, and what makes it great. Like, do you need to add these intricate strings in the background that no one else will appreciate or hear but you?
Right.
Or do you take that away and get rid of that extra noise and let them just hear the melody right there? I think as a songwriter, that was the biggest thing. Schematically, I think song titles were a huge focus for us on this. Just really making sure that the title was unique. Like that you couldn't Google search it and see a million other
like broken.
Exactly. Like make it stand out, but also have a ton of meaning. And we really pushed ourselves lyrically on this, and I feel very proud of how I did personally on my writing of the lyrics on this record. But there's always more to learn. Like we always try to roll the dice and push ourselves in a different direction, so that we're outside of our comfort zone, and it might suck. Like on a song, like for instance, last album was Hypnotized. I've never tried anything sort of like fully 100% bought into hip hop, like rapping on something, as I've always listened to it. But I'm like, am I capable of that? Like I never fully believed in myself in that, unfortunately. But after I just went for it and bought into it and did what I wanted to do with it and showed it to other people first, they were like, this is awesome. Thank God they liked it. And so releasing that ended up being like the most popular song on the album.
Right.
And so now we're less afraid to take risks. Like Happy All the Time is that, I think. It's kind of soulful and funky and kind of out there. And we got a gospel choir in on that one.
That's
which was
so cool.
fun.
I saw that.
Dude, that was a dream come true. We wanted to do that on Why Worry on the Wise.
Oh, really?
That was just me stacking it a ton of times.
Yeah.
We had a good budget this time, so we were able to shoot for the stars and hopefully get it.
I think, to me, the most appealing thing is feeling that confidence to just say, yeah, this is going to seem weird, especially on paper, but once you hear it, it's going to be fine.
I think it took time for me to get there mentally. You know
Really?
what I mean? Because that's kind of what you're doing as a frontman every day.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to just, like say something into a microphone and hope I don't look stupid. You know, and now I'm kind of at a point where I'm willing to try anything, and as long as I own it as myself, and hopefully you like me for me. That's I think that's it.
Yeah.
Honestly, is like, I realize a lot of times my favorite part about interviews is as I'm talking, I start to realize more about how I feel about something.
Right.
But the way I treat life in general is I'm not going to hold anything back at all. And it's taken time for me to get there. Like, I will say how I feel. We will write how we feel and try what we want to. And if you like it, cool. And if not, I know I do. And that's why I started doing this in the first place. Because I wrote songs in my bedroom. And I was like, that seems cool.
Yeah.
And that's what you can't lose sight of that. And I feel like it's easy to. So we made sure to keep that in the back of our minds.
That's been a huge theme with the guests we've had lately, is that it seems really simple, but that going for it idea and not having that fear. And it takes a lot. It takes way more than you think. You hear the catchphrases all the time of believe in yourself and stuff, and then when it comes down to a real life thing, you're like, oh no, I'm not good at this.
You hear what's like working out there sometimes, and then it's such a competitive world, and everyone's like, well, I feel like if I'm going to be successful, I have to do what these people are doing, and that's when you get really screwed. You can't.
Yeah.
You have to just totally take those risks and be willing, because otherwise you're playing it safe, and you're already risking your entire future by being in a band.
Right.
What are you holding back for? What is there to hold back? Because then if this doesn't work, then what are you doing?
Exactly.
I wish I would have tried more things. No, you gotta go full in.
Yeah, that's a big reason when we kind of started talking about what this podcast was going to be about. It hinged a lot on, if we're going to talk to artists, let's have it kind of be the concept of how many times have you heard, when are you going to get a real job? When you decided to go for it, and then eventually when you get to tell those people, like, look, like, it wasn't just a dream, like I was able to do it.
No, absolutely. And then there's two sides of that. Like right now we're in an amazing place where I was able to finally move. I think I was 26 years old when I could finally move out of my mother's house and then move to an apartment in Los Angeles where I've always wanted to live because, frankly, of the convenience.
Yeah.
Like, we can shoot music videos, record albums, everything's right there, writing everything. But to be able to do that strictly based off things that came out of our brains, I think is what makes it most exciting. But at the same time, it's such like you have to be touring. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm making money because I'm on tour.
Right.
But, and like, everyone has this expectation, like, oh, you're in a band, you're rich.
Yeah, right.
You must be rich. Why would you ever want to do a VIP session? Why would you ever want to do lessons on the side? I was like, well, to be totally honest with you, it's not a very lucrative business. I've been doing this for 10 years, and the reason why we're still doing this is because we're absolutely in love with it.
Right.
Like, we're not making a steady income. You have to be strategic about your finances. That's just the reality of it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm totally okay with saying that because it's that part of the journey where you have to also be good at that. It's a straight, you have to, there's part of it that is always going to be just what you love to do, and there's the other part that's just, it's also a business.
Yeah.
You just have to make money off of what you love to do.
What would you say, this is a big question, what's your advice, though, to that person who, because I've been in this many times, where I feel like you have the drive to do it, you have the confidence maybe, but you don't have the thing yet, like, not a musician, not an art, you don't have you have the direction, you just don't have the you know what I mean?
Kind of.
The goal.
The goal. So, like, are we talking musicians strictly, or are we talking...
I think kind of anything, right? Like, I've been a writer for the last 10 or 12 years in different capacities, and right now, although I work a desk job that I don't like.
You know what? I think what I'm going to love, what I love talking about is, this kind of brings me back to a situation me and my girlfriend are currently in, and it's kind of neat. Like, so, like, I've actually been pursuing this for a long time. When I started dating her, she always wanted to be in the film world, and we moved out to Los Angeles together, and she really wanted to be involved in film, but she had this very steady 9-to-5 job, and she was good at it, really good at it, and she was afraid, well, if I don't get this, how am I going to make money doing this other thing? So she went to school for film, and not a lot of opportunities or doors were open at the moment, but she got one. So that's kind of a lot of things, like, you kind of have to be in the area. And I think the biggest thing was surround yourself with people that are, first of all, better than you. Right. That is massive. Like that's one reason I love being around Brandon Paddock, our producer. Or he wasn't a producer on this album, but like he was for Duality and stuff. Is me and him really relate to each other on a personal level, but I get to watch him work, and I just know by looking at him as a producer and in many other facets of his craft that he's better than me. And I learn and grow so much more because I'm around him and I learn from him. It's like you're on a fast track to growth. And I love him for just who he is and being so willing to share his knowledge. And I think that's a huge thing with whatever your craft is. Find a way to surround yourself with people that do what you do but are unbelievable at it, so you can learn from them. And then also those people or other people around there might know of someone that's looking for a job or looking for someone to take a job. And she did that. And now all of these doors have just opened. She stopped working at that job, and we're both like in that situation where like we're making money where it's working, but we know we have to grind. Right. You have to kind of put yourself in a situation where it's like fight or flight. Yeah. And I think that's what makes it. That's kind of what separates the people that really want it from those that are like, I want it, but that's too much for me. And that's okay. That's okay to feel that. It's just you kind of have to recognize, is it or is it not? You have to be really positive.
I was going to say, it's the responsibility line. It's no, I have the guts to go quit my job tomorrow, but what if I have a mortgage? You have
to have a plan. Like okay, well, if I'm not making money right away, then I'm going to go, maybe I'll go apply here for a while. Like, when we first started out, dude, I was talking to someone else. I worked at Subway. I worked at Moe's. I was a telemarketer. Sorry, everybody. I did anything I could to make money and sustain myself. And I wasn't even paying rent at the time. Like, I was very fortunate to have had my mother let me stay there. That was just so I could pay for groceries and my bills and my food. And it's a growing process. You just have to see what's your threshold for pain. Right. At the end of the day, like, starving artist is a real saying. Oh, like, you are going to struggle at the ground level. Yeah. Some people are connected and they get there immediately, and kudos to those people. I envy you. But if you don't have that, then you just have to be willing to take the pain and just do it for the art. Yeah. Until it does work out in that way.
We've had a lot of comedians on the podcast, and the first few that we had, we kind of presented them with this idea of like how nerve-wracking it's got to be up, just like a frontman, really. But at the same time, you're getting instant response, just like singing, really. But just we were just trying to kind of play up the joke of like, how do you even get the nerve to do that? And that's so crazy. And he was almost so baffled by that question. He just goes, I have to. Yeah. Like, it was just like so, it's just like, I don't understand it.
That's another weird thing is like when I did my YouTube videos and then who I am on stage are entirely different from who I am off stage. Like, and then what I mean by that is energy-wise. Like, because it's almost like if you ever go to, it's weird to compare it to this, but if you go to like most establishments and they're like smiling and they're making you feel welcome, and they have to do that for about 9 to 5,
Right.
and then they're just drained. So like I'm a selective introvert. That's what Lonely Dance is all about. Like there's times where I'm up and I'm just as excited and energetic and happy as I am on stage, but like on stage a switch flips. Like there's that connection between us and the crowd, and then the adrenaline starts flowing. Like, not even joking, last show we played was in Santa Cruz. I almost fell asleep pre-show. Like, I was struggling to stay awake. I was exhausted. And we get on stage, and it was like I never felt that way at all.
Right.
But, like, it's weird. A lot of times, like, comedians, like, I've talked to some comedians about this. So it's like everyone wants to talk to a comedian and be like, oh, be funny. Oh,
Right.
tell
Yeah,
me
right
be
now.
funny. Like, no, dude, there's a context involved. Like, I'm on stage, and I have jokes prepared. And it's like, yeah, but, like, when they're not doing that, they just want to relax. We just want to relax. And so sometimes I feel this social pressure to where I feel like I have to always be on like 110%, or else people think something's wrong with me, or I'm tired, or I'm depressed. It's an interesting back and forth, but that's why I like when I get to talk after shows or before shows. I get to hang,
Right.
and I'm just me, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you get to know me a little bit outside of that.
Well, I think that's why, I mean, I've done different forms of music journalism over the years, but with something like this, and that's finally kind of my own, being able to ask questions that are a little, I would hope a little more thought-provoking, a little more deeper than just, you're going to
rambling, man.
Well, no, I mean, because you're going to do 100 interviews on this tour that are, Why'd You Name It Midnight? What's the name of the band? Stuff like that.
I don't mind those. I get it. Everyone needs to know that piece of information, but I do like the conversational stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's just more open. I get to just be myself. And I think the biggest thing is, like, going back, like, before, is, like, we're talking about the wanting to feel invisible, or having to seem invincible all the time, is with this album cycle, I feel like I can finally just let go. And it's a nice feeling, man.
That's awesome.
I just feel like I can totally just talk about everything. And since then, I feel like I've connected more with everyone else. Not just people that we're interviewing with, but like the people that get to hear this and understand the truth behind what it's like to do this for a living.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll wrap up with this. Whether it was while making the album or currently, what are some, whether it's films, podcasts, books, television shows that have been kind of like sparking your inspiration?
Man, so films... I really loved Alita Battle Angel. I just saw that recently.
I heard that's awesome, yeah.
So, like, some of the guys saw it last night without me, and not all of them liked it the same way I did, so to each their own. But I really loved it. I've been a fan of James Cameron films for a while, too. Like, Terminator 2 Judgment Day is one of my all-time favorites.
Oh, yeah.
But podcasts, mine is really nerdy, but I love... there's two of them. One is fantasy football based. I love playing fantasy football, but it's called the Fantasy Footballers. I'm massive fans of them. But also, there's this podcast called And the Writer Is. It's amazing. You get to all these famous writers, whether they're top tier or just getting started or it's somewhere in the middle. They talk about their journey, and I get to listen to my absolute favorite writers talk about their journey. I think that's really awesome, something special. Music. God, it's weird. The more you're involved, the harder it is to get into newer stuff. But there's this. I'm really into like hip hop, rap, and what it's kind of turning into, and how people are getting creative with it. And I think a new group to check out is called the Creek Boys from Baltimore. I found their song "Boss" right now on Madden soundtrack, which
That's such an old school thing to do.
It's my ringtone right now. Like, it gets me hyped.
Yep.
So Creek Boys "Boss" right now is a really good track, and they're constantly putting out new content. I've been also digging back into some older material though, so that's not as much like new. But video games, if I may, I'm a huge gamer. I've been really into. I'm really late to The Last of Us, but I just got that to sort of catch back up on that. God of War, the newer Spider-Man was amazing. I'm gonna get Resident Evil 2 soon. I can't wait. Dude, the most recent Resident Evil, I almost crapped my pants. Like, multiple times, like, that game is so terrifying. I played it in VR.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so it's like you're there, and like it's if you've never experienced VR, it's unbelievably immersive.
Yeah.
So being chased by a crazed man in his house and turning around and finding him right there to beat the crap out of you, that's a whole nother feeling.
I thought Red Dead's kind of the big thing right now.
Red Dead, yes. Yeah. I know. I was so on it, and then we started preparing for tour, and I fell off, and I need to get back to it again. I was having a lot of fun with that. I made my guy like all dressed to the nines. Once I got money, he's like wearing like a velour suit.
Like, that's awesome.
I'm really pumped on it. It's a fun game. So much crazy stuff goes down.
I never tend to think of video. I feel like the N64 is like the last thing I did.
I'm telling you, man, there's because now I got to switch. There's so many people that are in bands that are gamers. I feel like we all started out as like game nerds.
Yeah, that is true.
Right now I'm playing a lot of Diablo 3. I've already played that game multiple times, but it's on the Switch now, so I'm playing. I'm totally nerd about that. That and the newer Zelda, Breath of the Wild. That's fun. Super Smash, Mario Party. I'm a board game fanatic.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard of Munchkin. Dude, it's a card game. It's pretty involved, but we're all massively obsessed with Munchkin. Catan,
I get so much shit from friends for not getting into Catan,
Really?
What Ticket to Ride, like all the ones that are more in depth. I can't do them.
That's the thing is if you're gonna get involved, you have to have patient friends that already know the game that are willing to explain it because you have to play through it once and suck at it the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
In order to be anywhere near it,
I have to do the creative one. I have to do that is creative. It's strategy, but I have to do the write in a something stupid joke or something like.
We're thinking about playing. So Jackbox TV does that.
Oh yeah, I heard you saying that.
There's a game Quiplash.
Oh, okay.
And they have that. It's like Cards Against Humanity, but you make your own answers.
Yeah,
so
I like
we're totally
that.
gonna do that too. Probably gonna do that tonight. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, we just created a character Max and I both did for Dungeons and Dragons.
Ooh.
I've never played.
That's coming back around.
I've always wanted to. My friend's uncle was massive into it, and so was he, and all of my close friends have been super into it. And I love the creativity and just having to make up stuff on the spot. I was like, all right, let's go.
I asked the dude at my work about it because I heard he was doing it, and I just mentioned it offhand, kind of be friendly. And the next day he hands me like 20 pages, and he's just like, if you ever want to get involved, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is too much.
Yeah, I'm in a good position where I don't have to read a full book. Like we have a boy John who's like our guitar tech / stage tech / does everything, makes the show go, and he's a guy that's really knowledgeable about it. So anytime I don't understand it, he breaks it down for me like I'm 3 years old.
Yeah, that's what I would need.
Oh, it's very helpful. You need something like that.
Well, cool, man. That's it. Anything else to add?
Well, if you can check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/setitoff. Our documentary series Midnight Thoughts is coming out there about what it was like to put the album together. Please go stream it on all the platforms. Follow us on our social media, which is usually just @setitoff. And if you find our personals, definitely. But thanks for listening to this. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you, man.
All right, Jameson, that was with Cody, man. I loved how pumped he was about all the video games, and then you were just trying to hold your own.
I couldn't even hold my own. It was just more of like, I've seen a commercial for Red Dead Redemption before.
That was great, though,
he's like,
man.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, that's a game that exists. Did you know the ones he was talking about there at the end?
I did. Yeah, I don't play video games anymore, but I still keep up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, due to a crippling addiction.
That's right.
Yeah, like I was saying before the interview, like he's such an infectious dude. He reminds you of kind of like your little brother or something in a way, like in a really good way where you're just like, he's excited about everything. And you're like, man, I remember when I had that kind of joy.
Well, that's what I like listening to. I left all the video game stuff in because I thought it was hilarious. You guys just had good conversation.
I know. I was hoping when we wrapped up and I stepped out of his shower that we would just go play Nintendo Switch for a while, but no luck. He booted me out in the rain. Sad day, man. I know. What'd you think, though? I have questions for you, but I'll start by saying the big thing that stood out to me is he talked about this early on in the interview, but kind of like running to his art form for his like therapy. I mean, that's not like a new concept, but when he touched on like, you know, being in the grocery store and kind of breaking down crying and kind of wanting to go to the studio and stuff, I thought, man, like, do I run to like writing or podcasting, like whatever my like hobby or art form is? Do I run to that when like, if I'm fighting with like my, you know, significant other or family or something? Like, do you feel like you do that at all?
I feel like it definitely is an outlet. You know, I like that idea of running to your art because it makes me think of like doing your work and how it fights off that resistance, which is
the resistance.
Yeah, which is something that's really powerful. But I like that idea of, you know, things getting bad and instead of like turning Netflix on or going and eating a Snickers or something, you're honing your craft. I think that's something that I don't know how common it is, but it seems like a great way to cope with anxiety or stress or whatever.
And that's actually one of the first things Cody and I talked about, and something I love to talk to artists about. But there's always kind of that joke of like, oh, that band was better when that guy was on drugs. Like, there's always kind of that jokey thing of, you know, they were better when he was heartbroken, they were better when this or that. And at the same time, that singer's sitting there just like, well, screw you guys. Like, I want to be happy.
Yeah.
But that's I've heard that so many, like Kurt Cobain is always like the big example of that, of like, he gets a girlfriend and then his music starts to suck. That's what some people think. But I have found over the years, I mean, tell me if you feel like this with writing too, like I have found a lot over the years that it's harder for me to write when I'm more content or more happy in life. And maybe because it just feels cheesy. But when bad stuff does happen, I don't know, I think that feels more comforting to run to whatever your art form is. There's something more, this is like the emo-iest thing. There's something, to me, always been more artistic about like being angry or being sad. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I feel funny if I'm going to be like, I had the most sunshiny day and here's what the sun looked like and there's a horse over there. Maybe that just feels silly. I don't know.
No, dude, I don't think it does. I like that idea of like having a dark, bad day. There's this cloud hanging over you, and then you close your door in your room, and then you're just like there with your notebook, just pouring out the words. Because to me, I don't know, it just seems like it's a really great way to like soul search and get that stuff out. When everything's peachy and you don't need it as much, I feel like it's easy to take it for granted compared to when shit's really hitting the fan. Then you're in it and you're like, okay, I could really appreciate this because it's helping pull me out of the muck. You know what I mean?
Well, let me ask you this, not off topic, completely on topic. When you write, do you listen to music at all?
I do. I'm kind of weird about that.
And is it like more instrumental, more like mood music kind of stuff?
Well, let me tell you why I'm weird about that. So like I usually write chapters to different types of music. So like I have an outline for each chapter, and then I'll have like, the certain chapter will be classical and the other one will be like Lord of the Rings soundtrack, then it'll be Tron soundtrack, and then the other one will be like, Indian mystical music or something. But like I don't know, it's weird. I like tie it in to the topic of which I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah. So first of all, that's not weird. A lot of people do that. Yeah. So you're not, don't feel special. But that's funny you say the Tron soundtrack. When I was researching how to write dialogue for like a villain, basically, this girl was like, every time, like I assign a soundtrack to every one of my characters, and the villain is always, I find it's always the Tron soundtrack.
Is it?
And yeah, but I do the same thing. It's either silence or a certain type of music, but what's really fun to experiment with, and I hope like if anyone has experience with this, tell us, write to us and tell us what it is, because if I put on something heavy, like let's say the Chariot, that's really chaotic and heavy, I will write super weird stuff, and it'll be completely different versus when I put on something like Phoebe Bridgers or Coldplay or something like that. So I challenge you to also experiment with that. Even if you put on something that like you wouldn't normally listen to, put on like heavy metal and just see what comes out. But yeah, I don't know. The stuff with Cody just made me think there's so many variations on how you deal with crap happening in your life, but it's also very comforting to hear someone say like, whenever I broke down about this thing, whatever it was, he didn't go into too much personal detail, but he knew like his fix. He knew like, I need to go work this out through songwriting. And it just makes me feel bad at the same time, because I feel like most people don't have that outlet. Like they don't know where to run to, But I
also think too, when you think of songwriting, right? I mean, that is like a journey into the soul for a lot of artists, where they're pouring their emotions and stuff out on the page, where it could be a lot more cathartic than like writing a fiction story about, an elephant. You know what I mean? Where it's like you're processing and working through stuff, where I could see running to your art that way is something like a counselor would tell you to do, even if you weren't in a band, It's something that would help get you through something instead of running from it, And I could see where like maybe if your art was like sculpting,
right,
it could become something where you're just running from it, compared to like writing songs and putting lyrics to your heart. It's really dealing with it.
And I suppose that's, of course, why there is stuff like art therapy and horse therapy. There was a quote that Cody had that I wanted to see what you thought of, but we were talking about how each one of Set It Off's albums have in some ways almost been a completely different genre, which I really admire. Like I love that they're like gutsy enough to try that each time and not worry too much about, like the fan reaction maybe. And it's always been positive, but Cody's quote was, "You're already risking your entire future by being in a band. Why would you hold back?"
Yeah, that's a great quote.
And so, so it's really, I love that. But then you try to, like most things with us, you try to apply that to your own life and think like, so I'm already again, we always kind of joke that we have these really safe jobs, but what if you did just kind of apply that and say like, well, I'm already in this stable job, like I'm already in this boring thing, so that's fine. That's concrete and set in place. Why not go take a risk,
Totally. Makes me wonder what Cody's retirement plan is. If it's even there. Because, I mean, if you think about it, that's what so many people do, right? You get in a job, it's like you get your 401k, you're getting your pension, whatever it is, and you're so focused on like, okay, I'm going to work my way up so I can make good money for my family, make enough so I can retire, right? Compared to somebody who's living and doing something like what he's doing. And
right.
That is something which takes major cojones because you are putting it all on the line. I mean, what's your resume if it fails? What do you do?
Right. And I don't think that enters into most artists' minds. Like, to me, that's a really big linchpin to why I usually don't consider myself creative in a way, because the people that we talk to a lot don't have like those backup plans and don't have those worries. And I feel like that, but it's as scary as that sounds, it's also like a really key component to like making it,
I do.
Like we always quote, or I always quote Mark Norman saying, when I'm like, well, why do you do comedy? And he's like, because I have to. Like that supersedes that like drive and that hunger to do your thing, whatever your art form is. That I feel like when you're like truly doing it correctly, and you're like born to do that thing, that's always going to supersede like, yeah, but what if it fails? Or like, what if I have no retirement? I don't think tomorrow factors in very much.
I like that idea though, as much as it's scary. It's hard to say doing that with kids, I'm thinking of health insurance and keeping our family alive, but I love that idea. It reminds me, I'm reading this book. It's called Conversations with God. And it's about this dude who basically just one night started having a conversation with God and he like wrote it down. Right.
But it's called The Shack.
No, different book. This one, but it's like a 26-hour audiobook. I'm only like 5 hours in, but anyway, beside the point. God is talking to him basically about how to live your life, like finding purpose and all this stuff. And basically God says exactly that. He's like, you guys get so worried about all these different things. You try to make it as safe as possible. But he's like, in reality, you just have to search your heart and know that thing that you have to do. And just know that in doing it, you'll find a way to make things work. You know what I mean? Like you may not have the pension that you want or like be driving a Mercedes, but you're not going to die. Like we live in a world where like, it's pretty secure. We should have more people that are bold enough to do stuff like that.
I think of that all the time. And then I think, so is this just boiling down to like embarrassment? Like, is it just boiling down to like, oh, my friends are going to think I made a bad decision? And, and a lot of people don't have safety nets, of course. Like I think of being in my 20s and like thinking that I was taking this big risk with all these different jobs. But ultimately, like I had a bedroom at my parents' house whenever I wanted it, like, I mean, most of us have some form of that, whether it's friends or family or whatever. So it does feel different when you feel like, nah, I am taking this big risk. It's like, well, maybe you are, but like, yeah, you're not going to end up dead.
Yeah.
It's a funny way to think of it, but I think that was a big revelation for me to realize, like, what's the worst going to happen? Are you going to die? No? Well, then, go for it. Keep going.
But it is embarrassing, dude. I mean, think about like going, like just say like we both like writing, right? We're like, all right, we're going to quit and write, right? And then you write a novel or whatever your book is, you can't get it published, and then you got to go find another job. I think we're terrified of that. We're terrified of that scenario playing out. And so in the end, we're like, yeah, if I look at it, it's probably a 95% chance that's going to happen. And that's good enough for me. So I'm not going to do that.
That's so much of what I've been reading lately. I mean, the opposite of what I've been reading in terms of like, yeah, if you think that way from the start, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it is really hard to reverse that percentage and just start saying like, well, when this happens, when my book gets published, and realize, and like trying to have the attitude of like, it's already out there in the universe, like just keep speaking into it. At the same time, like as cheesy as that sounds, at the same time, I feel like I know people and have at least maybe read, stories of that type of thing working out pretty often. And then you're like, there's got to be something to that. And if nothing else, even if you're not buying into the whole like the universe is going to pay you back part, like it's not going to hurt you to be more positive and speak more positive and think more positively.
Yeah, and I like that idea because it's not just being positive, but it's giving yourself a chance to do what you were born to do. You get so bogged down by like, I have to get a job, I have to get my degree, I have to be building up my resume so I could get in a position to actually make decent money to do some of the things I want to do. It's all off in the distance, that treasure at the end, right, that you're seeking, instead of just going like, okay, well, I want to do like the thing that's inside me that I was born to do, and I want to figure that out. And instead of like treating that as something that you absolutely need to do, it's almost like, well, we hope that happens down the line. You know, I hope I find that down the line, but that's not the target. It's almost like something that comes along and like, it's a byproduct of your path. It's not the path. So it's a matter of like, no, let's make it the freaking path, dude. I want more people that are stepping into that. Yeah, I want to, and that's the whole point of this conversation. I feel like is like, how do you get people to take that step to be, you know, doing what Cody's talking about and just going full tilt with what you feel called to do.
Right. And I feel like in pretty much any industry too, if you get to do it for a while and then it fails, like, yeah, that's going to suck, but you've, just like any other job, like now you have a resume, you know. If Set It Off ended tomorrow for whatever reason, like he's built his name, he's built his brand, like he can parlay into something else pretty easily. And I feel like that's also just something we forget a lot. Like if you walked in tomorrow to your job and you were fired, it's not like you couldn't go work for something similar, you know, like you could pick it up again pretty quickly, and so could I. So I don't know. I don't think it's as scary as we build it up in our brains to be, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just knocking down that fear thing again, because I think it's sad how much fear robs us of stuff like this. I'm just thinking like, I know you're a talented author. Like I know it. I felt it in you for so long, and I just hope that like I'm just waiting for that one day where I'm just going to be like, yep, you know it too, and like it's coming out, right? Where it's hard to do because we're so controlled by fear. That like we're trying to do the thing that makes the most sense. We're trying to do the safe thing. You know, we're trying to take care of ourselves and be responsible. I mean, we're trying to be adults, even though inside I still feel like a kid. You know,
right.
I'm doing adult things. I have 2 kids. I go to an adult job, which is very dangerous and difficult, but I still, in my heart, feel like a kid.
Yeah. So I'll make this part quick, but I was able to start doing life coaching with somebody. I'm being coached. I'm not coaching someone's life. That'd be terrible. But that was something that we touched on, which was like, it almost sounded like, you know, most people have trouble with motivation. So let's start there. And I almost had to like cut it off and be like, oh, just so you know, like I feel like I'm overflowing with ambition and motivation right now. I just don't know which direction to go. And a lot of the books I'm reading right now on that same topic and it makes sense that a book is going to start like this, but it's been so much more time tackling the like get off your ass part, and here's how to do that.
Yeah.
And I get so frustrated because I'm like, should I flip to the middle of the book, because I got that. I just don't know where to go. And so that's kind of what I wrapped up with Cody, was kind of like, what's your advice to people that don't know? And this is what I'm going to ask you too, like who maybe have that energy and have that ambition to, you know, want to move on from their jobs, or they say they want to write a book, whatever, and maybe they just don't even know like where to start. And I feel like that's where a lot of people do just end up walking in the next day to their job and quitting and saying like, I'll figure it out after that.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a little bit before, where I think for some people, yeah, that's what they need to do. They need to walk in and quit if it's that life-killing job that's just draining you. But I think for most of us, it fits into the category of, how do I come up with my real plan?
Yeah.
You know, outside of work. So like you go to work 8 hours a day. What do you do with the other 8? Like find the time, figure it out, like build it, whatever it is. If you have to go to school or something, like it's hard because so many of us, I think, can be so rash. We're like, this job sucks. Screw this. It sucks. And you just make a rash decision where I don't feel like it's going to solve your problem. No. I feel like it has to be like, you have to know in your soul, like, I have to quit this because it's killing me and I can't do it anymore, you know? Yeah. Or like, I have to come up with a different plan and be smart about this. But it's all in here. And what you don't want to do is get into this emotional place where you're like, I just can't fucking take this anymore, you know? And then you just quit or whatever. Cause that's when it gets to this place where you make a bad decision. But I do think that for the person who's trying to find something, and we've both been there, you know, it's it's really tapping in to whatever you feel like you need to do and figuring out how to do it. And not just letting your job control you. You taking control of your life and figuring out that path.
That's something that the author Jen Sincero talks about a lot, is kind of trying to get back to that little kid mentality where like it's almost like you didn't have fears because you didn't know those fears existed. Like you hadn't made them up yet. So you made decisions based so much more on like heart and emotion than, calculating out like, yeah, but what if I can't get another job, or what if, my 401k doesn't come through? Like it's I don't know. It's easy to say like, well, that's very irresponsible. Like we've grown up for a reason, and you should use that logic. But something you said in there too, like I was just saying this to my fiance the other day. Like I was like, do you ever just think like if you magically had a month off of work, like, and you were paid and you have to worry about money and stuff, like what would you use that month to do in order in order to move yourself forward so you didn't have to go back after that month? Because in my head, it was all, like, what if I had a month to just like write every single day and I could like pound out, a book or get something moving in that way.
Yeah.
So I always come back to like, so that's not going to happen. I'm not going to get this free month off where I get to just write. So how can I incorporate that into my current schedule where I do have to work? Yep. And then which is like positive. It's a positive way to try to think. But then you're just like, the sheer amount of hours aren't there. Like I am busy X amount of hours a day, and I can't do this other thing. So I could half-ass this book for like 10 years based on my schedule, or should I quit, go really hard at it, and like hope for the best?
Yeah, I do, and it's a little daunting when you think of it like that. Like there was this story on 60 Minutes. Not to make this long, it'll be short. This dude who basically was getting tired with the way climate change was and not being tackled right. So he pretty much locked himself in a garage for like 15 years. And
that guy was Al Gore.
And he went through all the, like, he wasn't like a scientist or anything, but he bought all these books. He's just like, there has to be a way. And he ended up coming up with this way that they're like putting tons of money into now, where like, there's a way to fuel our cars that like reduces emissions by like 97%, that you could like put in all the gas stations where not everything has to go electric. But like the story was amazing because this dude literally was like, all right, like I know I have to do this. And he just straight up went, whoop, hold himself in there. Right? Forever. Yeah. And then he comes out, he's like, he's got, and not just one thing, he found out like 15 things they've patented, And it's just this amazing story of like this dude knowing what he had to do and then just like, I'm doing this. Like, I don't have a social life. I'm not doing anything else. Like, this is what I have to do. And that's a little extreme, but I feel like there's a level that we could go to ourselves with that. Or maybe it's we don't watch that Game of Thrones that we're dying to watch next month. Ooh. It's how far are you willing to go? And that's always the question that goes to my mind. Like, am I willing to go to that level to get to the place that I'm dreaming of? Right.
And I've said this to you many times, but where I think, I have to say to myself really often when I get discouraged with this kind of thing is like, well, you know what, I have all these people I look up to, authors, whatever, if they're authors, musicians, actors, whatever. And then I always think, you know what, my favorite author probably isn't doing right now. Like he's probably not watching Human Centipede again. Like that's the thing I have to think of all the time is like those people are grinding it out. Those people are working really hard. That's why they got to where they are. They're not sitting there complaining that they're not like their hero.
Yep.
They're next person up at all.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm glad you talked about 401ks because up until tonight, I thought it was a type of laser. So again, everyone should go follow Set It Off. Of course, their new album is called Midnight. Our socials are, of course, Godspeed Podcast. This was our first time live. So thank you guys for joining us. Later.
So